In listen-only mode.
Africanacity is Paul Kihuha turning scrap metal into affordable film equipment. Love Africanacity and believe in working with you to get things done.
True faithful.
COVID-19 has changed the world. But despite the challenges we face, the spirit of Africanacity is still alive.
What?
It's in the tenacity of the men and women who are still keeping us safe and keeping us going. It's in the creativity you use to find new ways to work, teach, do it all, and stay together, even if you're apart. And it's in the ingenuity of all those who are making a difference. Thank you to everyone still getting things done. Your Africanacity inspires us.
Africanacity is Lona Ruto recycling plastic waste into fencing poles that preserve the planet. At ABSA, we love Africanacity and believe in working with you to get things done. Africanacity is Paul Kihuha turning scrap metal into affordable film equipment. At ABSA, we love Africanacity and believe in working with you to get things done.
COVID-19 has changed the world. But despite the challenges we face, the spirit of Africanacity is still alive. It's in the tenacity of the men and women who are still keeping us safe and keeping us going. It's in the creativity you use to find new ways to work, teach, do it all, and stay together, even if you're apart. And it's in the ingenuity of all those who are making a difference. Thank you to everyone still getting things done. Your Africanacity inspires us.
Africanacity is Lona Ruto recycling plastic waste into fencing poles that preserve the planet. At ABSA, we love Africanacity and believe in working with you to get things done. Africanacity is Paul Kihuha turning scrap metal into affordable film equipment. At ABSA, we love Africanacity and believe in working with you to get things done.
COVID-19 has changed the world. But despite
Good afternoon. Welcome to this Absa Bank PLC webinar on the role of insurance during a pandemic. My name is Mutsi Mai, and I work at Absa Bank as the head of the brand and name change. This session is going to look at the role of insurance during a pandemic. We know that for the last 10 months, the entire world has been in a tailspin because of the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic is obviously a big risk factor for individuals and for institutions. And therefore, the role of insurance becomes really, really important. And today we've got some experts in-house as well as some customers to talk to us about what the role of insurance should be. For you as a consumer, how should you determine your insurance needs? What should you prioritize? What should you not prioritize? What is the insurance regulator doing to support consumers of insurance during this period? What are insurance companies doing to support you during this period? And what are the things you need to be looking at? So I'm going to invite Immaculate Akinyi, who's the Business Development Manager of Absa Bank Insurance Agency, to talk us through the overview of the session. Welcome, Immaculate. Thank you. Immaculate, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
So good afternoon. My name is Good afternoon, Mutsi. Good afternoon. My name is I'm in bank assurance. I run with business development for the digital channels. So this afternoon, we're excited to host this important virtual session. This is our initial insurance webinar, and it forms part of the series of the webinars which we will be doing, which then will ensure that we are in constant communication with our customers, and more specifically on matters concerning insurance. So despite the difficult circumstances we are in, we find ourselves ready to support you. So this will be the first of our sessions on the topic. So the topic today will be about the role of insurance during a pandemic, particularly timely to be able to give you an insurance aspect with regards on how you can handle the challenges that COVID-19 has thrown our way. And for that, I hand over back to Mutsi.
Thank you very much, Immaculate, for that brief introduction. So to start off, we're going to put up some housekeeping rules. I'll invite Marianne to just put on the screen the housekeeping rules to just make sure that we've got a smooth session for the next 1.5 hours. Marianne, could we please have the housekeeping rules? Thank you. Excellent. So the first thing to note is that all attendees will be muted throughout the session. So all attendees will not be able to speak. You have a chat box on the side. You're able to actually jot down any questions. If you've got any questions, put them on the chat box and we'll be able to respond to them. The second item is that today's webinar is being recorded. After this event, we shall share a link with you, and this link will also be available on the Absa Bank Kenya YouTube page. So you're welcome to review the content after the event. You're also welcome to share it with colleagues and friends. The third element is that there will be polling conducted during the webinar. We'll ask you for feedback on the section. Okay, we need participants to be. Thank you. So we're saying that we'll have polling being conducted during the webinar, and we'll ask you to do a feedback on various information as well as on the quality of the event. And if you do have questions, put them on the chat box. And a quick reminder, as you just saw, it's very important that you keep your microphone muted at all times. So before you pick up your phone or talk to somebody, please make sure that you are on mute. Thank you very much. So that's a very quick review of the housekeeping rules. Thank you very much, Marianne, for that. So to just go back to the topic for today, most consumers of insurance are very worried about how they will be able to meet their obligations in the event of risk, whether it's health risks, whether it's losing a job, whether it's paying your motor insurance, whether it's paying education insurance, whether it's life insurance, whether it's personal accident. The reality is that there's some cases where you're required by law or by somebody who has sold your property to have insurance. So the question becomes, which aspect of insurance should you actually focus on? So that's the question we want to answer today. We want to try and understand what are the options that consumers have? What knowledge, what information do you need to have so that you can be able to make the right decisions? If you have to prioritize, what should you put emphasis on and what should you drop off? And to do that, we're going to have, number one, a voice of a consumer. We've got one of our customers for Absa Bank Insurance Agency who has kindly agreed to come and share his perspectives, his concerns, and his plan going forward with insurance. We also have somebody from IRA who will give us a view of the regulator. Remember, the regulator exists to protect consumers. So the regulator is here to tell us what are the concerns that you should have, what should you not worry about, and how is the regulator taking care to make sure that insurance consumers are not taken advantage of and that they are protected. And then we'll also have the GM of Absa Bank Insurance Kenya Limited to be able to talk to us about the products, the solutions they have, so that you can be able to know what to do in the event that you do want to buy insurance. Let's remember that as the year comes to an end, most people will actually be making their insurance decisions towards the end of the year. So it's quite useful that we have this conversation right now. So to begin with, I'm going to start by introducing the speakers. First off is Julia Shisia, who's the head of bank assurance at Absa Bank Kenya. Julia is a very experienced and seasoned insurance professional. She's a graduate from Egerton University with a Bachelor of Science degree, but more important than that, she's also done quite a lot of studies in the area of insurance and risk management. Julia has also had the privilege of working with several banks in this country in the area of bank insurance. So she's very seasoned. She's seen products across various banks. She's interacted with very many different consumers with very many different products, and she's got a very good view of what works and what doesn't work. Welcome, Julia. We also have Mr. Elias Omondi, who is from the Insurance Regulatory Authority. Elias is an actuary, and he is here to help us understand how to look at the regulator's perspective. Elias works with the Insurance Regulatory Authority. We also have Harrison Mwakisagu. Harrison Mwakisagu is the IT manager for Fortisnet, and he'll be giving us the view of the consumers. So I'd like to welcome all these people into the room today, and I'd like to invite Julia to make some comments. But before Julia makes her comments, I think we'll invite each of the panelists to make one or two comments, starting with Julia, and then Elias, and then Harrison. Julia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mutsi, and thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Even as we sit here today, thinking about the environment today, the COVID situation that we are all going through, and many challenges that we are facing as a nation, we are with you, and we all are going through the same. It's a difficult moment, but we believe that sooner than later we'll get out of it. But let's just continue staying safe, keep the protocols that have been shared by MOH, and we hope that sooner than later, all of us will be out of this. So today we are happy to have you all to share ideas. It will be an interactive session. Chat us, tell us about some of the challenges, some of the things that you want to hear from us today. We want to just try and demystify the insurance space and try and make it a bit easier and for you to appreciate some of the things that insurance can be able to do for you. And we are here to share knowledge, to be informative, and to enjoy this session together. So looking forward to having an interactive session with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia. Elias, welcome to the panel. Elias,
right, thank you very much. Right. Thank you, Absa team, and also thank you, Motsi, for this particular opportunity. Thank you all the people that have joined to this particular webinar. Ideally, as has been mentioned by Motsi, it's quite important for us to basically provide an overview of the regulatory outlook in terms of how insurance is really important in these particular circumstances. Now, COVID-19 has really had a number of effects, not only within the insurance sector, but also within the entire financial ecosystem. So I'll basically just want to share a few insights on the role that we play as a government statutory body. At the same time, really try to bring into context what ideally customers should be able to experience at this particular moment. So I want to share a couple of slides, and thereafter I know we'll be able to have interactive session as we progress with this particular webinars. So
thank you very much.
Allow me to share my screen, or maybe Mutsi, something you want.
No, Elias, not yet. We're still doing the rounds of just everybody introducing themselves. So we'll invite Harrison. Harrison, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mutsi, for the welcoming note. And thank you to all attendees for making it to this session. And I'm looking forward to actually presenting the customer perspective, what we expect to see from the insurance companies, and generally as well in terms of the regulator themselves. How are they protecting us as consumers? And where we have issues, how can they be able to intervene and be able to help us actually achieve the promise that was being made by the insurance companies where we subscribe to their products. And looking forward to an interactive session where the rest of the attendees they are customers as myself, and they would be able to share more, ask more than what I would actually say within this session. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Harrison. That's very much appreciated. So to start off, we want to find out, what are we thinking as consumers? What's in our mind? What are our thoughts? What are our fears? What are our worries? So Marianne is going to put up a poll on the screen. We'd like you to participate in this poll. And the poll is essentially asking, what are your fears during the pandemic? Remember, insurance is ultimately about helping us to deal with our fears and our concerns. So what are your fears during the pandemic? You are able to click on the blank spot next to the item and choose what you want. So you've got 5 different options. What are your biggest fears? Is it about sickness? Is it about collapse of the business? Is it about cash flow management? Is it about job losses? Or are you just generally worried about the future? We'd like you to tick all the ones that apply to you. So you could tick one, you could tick all of them, you could tick 2 of them, but please put in your comments, and then we'll also share the results with you as we go along. What are you worried about? What's keeping you awake at night? Please try and answer this as spontaneously as possible. So let's just take about 1 minute, 30 seconds to a minute to actually select which items we are worried about during this pandemic. Thank you very much. Let's just do that. I will give us 30 seconds, and then we shall continue from there. And of course, we shall later on get a view of the results of that poll. What are your fears during the pandemic? What are your fears during the pandemic? Okay. 69% of the people so far are worried about sickness. Makes sense because it's a pandemic. Another 69% are worried about the future. What does the future hold? Is this the end? Is there any future for us? That's a legitimate concern. Then, of course, people are worried about job loss, and those who run businesses are worried about cash flow. Then, of course, there are people who are concerned about whether or not their businesses will collapse. So it's very interesting to know that. People are worried about sickness. They're worried about whether there's a future, whether they will have their jobs, and whether they'll have enough money to meet the expenses. So as we look at this, one of the things we'll be asking ourselves is therefore, what role does insurance have to play in allaying those concerns? Now, final thing before we hand over to Julia Shisia is this session is going to be very interactive. The panelists are not going to necessarily give you a lecture. It's going to be a conversation between the 3 panelists. They will give us a quick overview of the area of specialization as relates to you, and then we'll have a quick conversation around that. And like we said, if you do have questions throughout the session, please feel free to keep asking. So I'm going to ask Julia, based on what you've seen on that poll, how do you as ABSA Kenya speak to consumers' needs in relation to what you've just seen on the poll? The people have told us they're worried about sickness, that's a big one. They're worried about the future. Insurance is always about future risks. They're worried about losing their jobs. So generally speaking, what is giving rise to these fears, and what do you as ABSA Kenya have to do to speak to those fears? Thank you very much, Julia.
Thank you very much, Mutsi. And I'm glad that we all have fears. Even as I sit here being one of the panelists, we have our own fears. And it's interesting to note that obviously health comes in. We've got jobs, we've got our daily lives that we live, and tomorrow, what does tomorrow hold? So those are some of the questions that every day about how then do we move. In what we do, we really try to understand our customers, and we've got lots of financial solutions that we provide to our customers, because when we start our lives as children, as we grow, there's a certain pattern that we follow. We start making our money at some stage. Of course, as we start making our money, we start growing our money, we enjoy our money. And as we are growing and enjoying our money, and we are also investing that money, whether you're employed, whether you are owning a business, or whether you are working for, for charity, whatever it is, there's always a pattern and journey that you enjoy. And then after you've invested this money, there's always an aspect of maybe you want to pass it on to the next generation. And all this, if you look at the cycle that you take as a customer or as a human being, there's an aspect of protection at every angle that you're growing. If you have started making money, you're obviously looking at how do I ensure that I've protected this money? And we have very different ways of viewing risks. Some people, to them, risk is just being, what we've seen today is just, I just want to be healthy. That's a risk to me. So some, it is about attack. I fear to be attacked. To some, it will be about, what about education? You see, like people have talked about their future. What about my education? Will I be able to take my children to school? What about family? We have different risks and different ways of, of looking at these risks. And when we look at these risks, then we ask ourselves, what am I doing to mitigate the risks that I'm faced with? So we have different ways. Some people will choose, okay, maybe I need to be a member of a welfare society. I need to put some money in the bank. I need to save some. Some people will opt for religion, and some people will say, you know what, I need to put some money in the insurance event, and there's an eventuality. But what we want to bring out, it's always an aspect of risk mitigation that you've got to transfer from yourself to somebody else. And this is where now the insurance comes in. When you feel now, I'm here, I've bought this phone, I've bought this house, I've bought this car, I have this asset, I want to invest in my future. Should something happen, I still want to make sure that my beneficiaries are still being taken care of. Then the aspect of insurance comes in. Of course, the question comes in, how much is enough? How much do I need to put aside to ensure that I'm able to achieve what my objectives are? So here at ABSA, what we do, we analyze, we check what is it that we can do for you. How do we then check your needs vis-a-vis what you have today? And in the COVID situation today, what we have actually tried to do for our customers is to actually evaluate what you have and what risks have been reduced in your space, and how can we go further and ensure even the cost that you're incurring today is being taken care of. For example, maybe most of us are not traveling, we are not going to work, so we've parked our cars. So obviously our risks to accidents have also reduced, Or maybe most of us today, we are thinking, if I'm running a business somewhere, my employees are even working from home. If I have things that I keep carrying to work and back to the house, my computers, my phone, now I'm not carrying them all the time. So definitely your risks have gone down. So what does this mean? So we work with you, we see how then can we negotiate to give you certain discounts, and how do we then look at areas where maybe you may not need to transfer this risk, or how do we reduce your risk substantially? I'll give you a story of a teacher who called me, a head teacher who called me the other day and told me, I'm being asked to pay some insurance premium, but my buses are all packed, so what do I do? So I told her, you may not have to pay for the buses fully, but again, don't withdraw insurance because they are packed doesn't mean the risk has ceased, because the trees that there could fall on them and all. So what we could do maybe for you is to stagger your payment, because you're saying the students are not there, or the ones who are paying, they have paid maybe half the school fees. So what we can do for you is to just make sure that you are able to get the affordable payment patterns and all. And we were able to negotiate for this customer, and they got a 25% discount. So under this difficult situation, if you can get a discount about 20 to 25 or even 30%, then it starts lifting some of your financial burdens. When it comes to things like job losses, we also have things like retrenchment covers that we have offered a lot of our customers, and they've enjoyed that. Some of them who are retrenched or their salaries were removed from them, who are able to pay for their loans for a period of about 6 months. So those are many other aspects that we look into, and we are looking at ensuring that we can enhance that kind of approach to all the customers that we serve. And maybe I can pause there for Mutsi, if we can maybe move to Elias to give us more insights in regards to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, for that a very insightful view. Talk a little bit about somebody who's running a school and they're concerned about buses moving. What are the concerns did this person have relating to insurance, just so that we can get a sense of what the sentiment is out there?
For this person, mostly it was about the costs, how much it's costing them, being that they're not collecting as much. And then the other aspect, they felt the risk has substantially reduced because then the buses are not moving. So they have reduced. So what do I do? You know, then that's how we got to negotiate for them. And we gave them about 30% discount. And then we also made a payment plan for them. They're able to pay about 5 installments. And they were very comfortable with that because that was less than what they had paid the previous year. And for schools, you know, that is substantive. 30% for a school that is not a small school, then that is really substantive. And it was a good thing for them.
Excellent. That's a very good perspective, because what you're saying is that even as some risks are growing, there are some risks that have reduced. So in this case, when the person's school is running, there's normally the risk of the children in the school having accidents, falling sick, but now that risk has actually been eliminated, at least from the school's perspective. So I think one of the things that Julia is also telling us is, even as there's some risks that are growing in the pandemic, if you look at it very holistically, there are some risks that are going down, and one would argue then that that would help people to actually begin to rethink their spend, because you're then able to reallocate the spend. Where typically they'll be paying for health insurance, now they're more focused on the bus insurance. I think another important element that Julia has brought out, of course, is that you have to look at the risk from a long-term perspective. It's not just the whole issue of the cost, but it's the risk of losing the investment in the buses. So even as you look at your insurance needs, you need to ask yourself, what do you need to protect? So it's not just concerned about what's in your pocket, but what you need to protect. I'm sure those buses, if they're 5 or 10, are probably worth several millions, and that's something we need to protect. Thank you very much for that, Julia. So if we now segue to Elias Omondi. Elias, based on what Julia said, what would your advice be to our customers? In this case, for example, you've got a customer who's saying that, yes, they'd like to pay insurance, but they don't have enough money, and the asset is not necessarily in use. What does the law say about those sorts of things? What sort of consideration, for example, with the various risks that they face? Elias, over to you. Thank you.
Right, thanks a lot. And quite interesting insights from Julia. And one thing that ideally we really need to bring into context is that given that this particular pandemic has had a wide range of implications, whereby they're ranging to some of the policyholders that already insurance companies had. And what the insurance regulator did in that particular case was to really advise insurance companies, the insurers, distributors such as bancassurance agents, to find ways in which they would still maintain this particular policy. So ideally, we wanted the customers to still be covered. So that's why you would see components of things that we usually term as premium holiday, in a way that they would still be protected. Maybe I just want to move ahead to maybe share a couple of insights regard to the pandemic and what we were basically experiencing. So we will be able to see how then this plays a very important role towards how customers have been treated amidst this particular pandemic. And one of the things that the regulator really looks at is how then we maintain efficient, fair, and safe market these particular products. Now, with the rise of the pandemic, there are so many things that are driven because of the lockdown, and that really meant that these particular people are on policy. So sometimes it would be advisable in that particular case, some customers sort of, why can't we then downgrade our policies? In this particular case, if you have a comprehensive cover and with the financial difficulties, you could ideally take a third-party cover. So in a way that you would still be able to protect yourself within that particular coverage. Another thing is that you will see that one of the other roles is how then we protect these particular customers. Now, with the rise of this particular pandemic, customers were quite scared. How do I really how do I still be covered? Another thing is that, is my policy still effective? And one of the things that we did advise was that customers had to go through their policies. It was important for these particular customers to look at what are the exclusions, what is my coverage? And in that particular case, you could be able to provide some form of security. We wanted the customers to feel secured. We wanted them to know that they had an objective, that in case they are faced with any risk within this particular period, they will still be able to be covered. Other thing is to develop. We wanted to provide information. We wanted to ensure that customers are aware that there are still products that they can get within this particular period. And for instance, there are a number of companies that have already developed COVID-19 related products. So in case someone wants to get a policy that takes care of you during this particular period, you can ideally buy a cover that is predominantly going to take care of your COVID-related risks. So market development is a very important aspect that also, as we within the regulatory field and on this particular sector, we look at keenly. Now, there are so many implications that we've experienced. So for instance, workforce transformation. We've seen employees moving towards working in a safer environment. People are working from home, and there are a number of effects of lockdowns and curfews. So this basically means that the exposure that these particular customers had is drastically reduced. That means that it was also important to look at how then do we treat these particular customers that had already looked into working remotely. They are not exposed to a number of risks. There was limited movement across the city. So that kind of, in a way, reduced the exposure that these particular customers had. Therefore, it was quite important to look at how then can these particular customers be compensated. In this particular case, we looked at how then do we quickly meet COVID-19 related claims. And that's why the regulator came up with an opportunity and a guidance to advise customers to quickly raise any concerns that they had, and even the claims that they had with different companies that they could be expedited and paid within the shortest time possible. We also see a lot of technology adoption. Again, with limited distancing.
Take you back a little bit. You've talked about getting some feedback from customers, opening up their lines so they could give you feedback. What are some of the concerns that you had customers giving? Because we know we've got almost 200 people on this webinar. So what are some of the things that they've been saying, just so that we can see to what extent our participants can resonate with that?
Yeah, so one of the things that really came out was some customers were not sure whether their policies really covered COVID-19. And one of the things that we did was to really require companies again to take their customers through the kind of policy documents that they had signed. So customers would call in and ask, our
customers can actually be able to go and look at?
Comprehensive section that looks into issues of consumer protection and consumer education. So maybe if I look at from the consumer education side, there are quite important documents that you have that really guides consumers on what types of policies are there and what you really need to do to basically be able to gain or to buy these particular policies. Over and above that, we have quite an elaborate, you can raise a particular grievance, and that you'll be able to connect to our consumer protection team to help you out in those particular grievances. So there is an elaborate component within our website that really addresses these particular issues.
Okay, fantastic. And then just before we go on, so if we just switch very briefly to Julia, for Absa Bank Insurance Agency, do you also have a similar sort of line for your customers, helpline, some email address, or some portal where your customers can be able to actually extract information that is kind of aligned with what the Elias and his team have at IRA? Is there some sort of thing, or are you in the process of setting that up still?
Yes, we do. We've got our customer be raised to us directly through email, and we definitely get back to us on the questions that, to the issues that concern them. We also work quite closely to ensure with the regulator that we are also taking care of the customers' aspects from a regulatory perspective, so they are also not exposed. So we do quite a lot of that. And obviously right now what we're doing is reviewing even the policies the customers have with us, the limits they have. I can see many people have talked about health being a very important aspect of their risks today. We are looking at what we do here to make sure that our customers are really fully.
Thank you very much, Julia. Elias, back to you.
I really like what Julia's mentioned. And one of the things that Julia's mentioned is whereby those little contact, or at point there was no contact at all. And one of the things that we did encourage the players to do, the insurance players, that means the insurance agents, the insurance companies, was to provide a platform whereby their customers would still access their services. And one of the things that Julia's mentioned is that they have a platform, emails that they could ideally get to their customers in case there was any issue that they needed to discuss. And this is quite encouraging, because adoption of technology is something that we've seen as one of the things that has really been amplified because of connectivity issues around social distancing, and also enabling people to continually stay safe. So technology has been one of the key items that we've seen over the last couple of months fully being adopted within the insurance ecosystem. The number of challenges that again that have been that have also arose within this particular pandemic, in terms of business continuity, in terms of increased cyber risk. And one of the things that we did was to ensure that companies relooked into the issues of cyber risk, because we wanted the information that they have already kept on behalf of their customers are safe. We wanted to ensure that the funds that they are basically holding on behalf of these particular policyholders are safe. So it was important to look at how then do we ensure that we are protected out of cyber risk. And one of the things that was quite amplified was the cyber risk when COVID-19 started. This meant that people used to stay at home. Some companies that were not quickly to adopt this technology were quickly trying to put their houses in order. And that meant that there are some of the risks that were not properly looked into. So we realized that it was important again to tell companies you needed to look into the cyber risk issues. Over and above that, COVID-19 has brought a number of challenges. Some customers lost jobs. That meant that there was an increase in credit risk in terms of these particular customers were unable to pay their policies, and it meant that there was an increase in premium outstanding. So it was quite important again to look at how then these particular customers are protected. And one of the things that we required companies to do is to provide a grace period. You needed to, we advise the customers to talk to the insurance companies, to talk to the insurance agents, that these are the issues that I'm currently facing. I would like to get a grace period for a particular period of time. This would allow you to ensure that your policy is not lapsed, because within the insurance policies, if you don't pay your premiums for a particular period of time, that particular policy can be lapsed. And that means that you won't be able to get the full benefit in case this particular risk arises. So it was quite important again to require customers and their companies, their agents, to be in a discussion in a way that we would be able to protect them amid these particular difficulties. Again, the increase in claims in some particular areas. So in terms of health-related products, you could see the number of people that are being affected by COVID-19. This meant that there was stress around the medical claims. But again, some classes of business kind of experienced a very good turnout. It means that the risks were highly reduced. That means that because of lack of movement, it meant that the risk exposure is highly reduced. Then companies would ideally benefit in such particular lines of business. So it was quite a mixed reaction in terms of the implication of COVID-19. Now, the authority has taken measures, and it will continue taking measures that will ensure that customers are fairly treated, and also disclosures are clearly provided. And that's why I really liked when Julia mentioned that they usually have discussion with their customers in terms of their policies. What do your policy contain? Where is the level of coverage in your policies? What is the limit of your policy? And over and above that, we also want companies to have an efficient claims processing processes in terms of, in case a claim has been reported, pay those particular claims. So around market conduct, we needed the companies to meet the expectation of their customers. At the same time, they continue looking at issues around resilience. Maybe just
question, Elias, before you just continue. You talked something about claims. So if I'm a consumer, if I'm Harrison in this room, I'm thinking to myself that I've paid my cover for the last 5 years, like Julia, for example. To what extent are they actually meeting these claims? Are they keeping the side of the bargain, the insurance companies? What's the point of view from the regulators regarding that? Because obviously, as a consumer, I'm saying, if I pay out this money, am I going to get, are these guys going to keep their promises? Are they going to show up? Elias, what do you say? I can see Julia is raring to answer that, but I think let's see the regulator first.
No.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that the insurance is basically to meet these particular claims. And one of the things that we highly advocate is that in case there is a risk that has materialized, the insurance company is obliged to meet that particular claim and covered pandemics such as COVID. So in case this particular person is hospitalized, then you would be able to get that your company really is able to meet that other side, and the claim is a valid claim that ought to be paid. Therefore, at that particular point, the regulator, it's an obligation that companies have been meeting some of them, most of the claims that are valid at this particular period.
Fantastic. So let me just ask the $1 million question, which I would as a consumer. I've got an insurance policy from perhaps UAP or Jubilee or First Assurance. In this particular case, mine is from First Assurance. I'm an SME person, and as God forbid, somebody in my family gets COVID, and I've got a health policy. Is COVID covered?
It will depend. It will depend on the policy. Now, in case your policy covers the family, and his part, and that particular policy document really stipulates that it covers the principal plus the spouse and 2 or 3 children, and there's a COVID case in that particular case, then that becomes a valid claim that needs to be paid. Again, something that needs to be looked at. It depends on how the exclusions have been structured. We had to look at all the medical policies that had been issued by a number of companies. Some companies had an exclusion in terms of the pandemics, and what we did was to ideally discuss with those particular companies in such a particular case. We requested them to meet some of the COVID-related claims. But there are some policies that were outright, and they would not really mention anything on exclusion of these particular pandemics, and that meant that those particular claims were valid in terms of payment. So it's quite important, again, to really advise customers. You really need to look into your policy document, and you really need also to know what is the scope of your coverage. So if the scope really covers even your family members, then that becomes an eligible and a valid claim that needs to be met. But in case maybe your policy only covers you as the person, then it cannot be extended to your family members.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You can continue, Elias, and then we'll go to Harrison, who I'm sure has got lots of questions. Julia looks like she wants to make a comment on that bit or not.
Maybe just one comment before he can go in his slide, is to say that the ABSA way of doing things definitely is to make sure that we have studied the customer's policies deeply. That's what we've been doing, and ensuring that actually those clauses in relation to COVID are, some of them were actually excluded, but the policies that we have negotiated with our customers, we find to a large extent they're able to accommodate some of the COVID-related sicknesses. So those are some of the things that we are here doing for our customers to make it a bit lighter for them and make sure the insurances are incorporating those in certain aspects. Maybe they'll not foot the full cost, but surely they should be able to reduce some aspect of the cost. So we've been able to accommodate most of those costs in our policies as we negotiate forward with our customers. Thank you. Maybe back to you, Elias.
Right. Thank you. So what have we experienced, and what are the key issues that we've really noted as a regulator? We've noted that this pandemic period has amplified the importance of insurance sector in terms of how do we build trust. And one thing that has been mentioned by Julia is how then they have evolved their policies and to enable their policies also to cover these particular experiences that the customers are facing at the moment. So it is quite important that we are working towards raising awareness, and it's important for customers to know what exposures they have and to ensure that they are covered at this particular period. So what we are talking and what we are telling the insurance companies and the insurance agents is that they need to ensure that there is visibility of the insurance sector during the crisis. The second thing that we've noted is that digitization is a key enabler in the context of social insurance, on social distancing. So it is important for insurers and businesses to ensure that they provide platforms, they provide channels that will enable these customers to access their services. They would be able to come to maybe an insurance company or to the agency offices or to your bank assurance office, but you need to provide to them a platform that will enable them really be able to still access these particular services. Well, another thing is that we are working in coordination with a number of players within the sector. We are working with the government, we are working with other supervisors, and also with the industry in terms of how do we ensure this close coordination. So one of the things that you'll be able to notice is that most of the health insurance coverage basically works after maybe there's a component that NHIF pays and there's a component that your insurance provider pays. So that close coordination is very, very important to ensure that we really address the issues that customers are facing. Just to conclude is that this is a pandemic and it has quite terrible implications on people's health, but it will be able to give us an opportunity to amplify the importance of this particular sector. So one thing that I would basically able to advise our customers, be it the customers that I want to buy a policy, is that you really need to look at your risks. What are the exposures do you have? And you have a coverage for that particular exposure. Another thing is that talk to your insurance agent, talk to the bank assurance agent, talk to your insurance company. They are able to provide a number of products that will cover you during this particular season. It is important for you to be protected. It is important for you to protect your business. It is important for you also to protect your family. So with that, the need for insurance is highly amplified. And we cannot overstress this, is that we've seen people really getting a lot of benefits within the sector because they had a particular policy that enabled their businesses to really look at the resilience within the ecosystem of the financial system, and also their families to be well protected during this particular period. I'll take it back to the moderator in case there's any question or something that you may want me to mention.
Thank you very much, Elias. That's Elias Omondi, Senior Actuarist at the Insurance Regulatory Authority. He's still with us, so please, if you've got questions for him, keep them running. But then we now think about the customer, because we've heard from the regulator, we're listening to the insurance agent, who of course represents the consumers. But the question becomes, Harrison, have you even read your insurance policy? You even know what your policy booklet looks like? Because Elias is saying that you need to look in there and make sure that there are no exclusions. So maybe perhaps you can start just giving our participants a sense of yourself as an insurance consumer. You know, are you here? Are you having the voice of Mr. Harrison, who is a family man, or is it Mr. Harrison, the businessman, or is it a mixture of both? What policies do you have, just so that people can begin to relate to what you're saying? But then the question will be $1 million question. Have you ever even looked? Do you even know where your policy document is and what exclusions are there? So just if you could kind of begin by reacting to what Elias has said, but after giving the context of your consumption. Thank you.
All right. So in terms of myself, in terms of the risks and considerations, I consider them either personally as a person, as well as in regard to ourselves as the business. So I'm a consumer of insurance products. So far, since I started, I've consumed at least 5 products in many different categories. So I've read through my policies. I've had time whenever I receive those policies, I usually sit with the insurance provider and actually go through line by line. It's never in a rush. Go through line by line, what has been excluded, what is covered in there, and I get to know these are the caveats. So in all policies I receive, I take like 2 or 3 to compare. What's the caveat here? What's the caveat here? What's the caveat here? Then what's the best to move ahead with? So that's what I do generally. So, okay, Mutsi, you have a question?
Yeah? No, just go ahead.
Okay, sure. So in terms of what Julia as well as Elias have shared, generally, it's quite informative, I would say, and based also on the audience as well, based on the survey that you have just, or the poll that you just ran. Myself as well, when this COVID pandemic came, health was one of the key risks here as well, where the cost of treatment could be still very high when it comes either to the COVID-19 or as well to any other illnesses arising from it. And as we saw, especially with more studies that have been conducted generally, mental health is one of the things that is actually coming out for most of the guys who have actually either contracted COVID-19 or at the risk of contracting it, or even working from home itself. It actually strains you out quite a lot. So where we have considered ourselves in terms of mental health, where we see that we are very solid, my mental health is very solid, but at this point where the pandemic is, it's actually pushing us even to our limits. So where we are dealing with one crisis after the other. So we'd like to see how are insurance companies actually taking care of mental health for their consumers, which is not the same case as where you'd have physical illness. If you walk into a hospital and maybe it's just your leg, you've broken your leg, you'll be told, you'll be okay, you'll be healed, the doctors will take care of you, but what about the mental health aspect of it? Other things I would have considered then as well is the loss of my job, as well as a pay cut or something like that. You know, most of us here, especially as myself, I'm a technical guy, so with my skill, I never thought maybe one day I may be out of employment. But what we have seen, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic period, is that even some of the key companies we worked with have actually been brought down to their knees. So what happened to the employees who were part of it? They actually lost their jobs, and they were really good people, very well trained, very well skilled, but here comes the pandemic and takes it all in that case. But as a business as well, we have been looking at...
sorry, Harrison, before you go to the business side of it, if we just stick to the customer, to the retail customer. Sure. From your point of view, have you cut out any insurance? Have you canceled any policies? Or are there any policies that you are planning to not renew in the coming year?
Yes, so in terms of policies, actually, I haven't had to cut out any policies because most of them are actually taken before, just maybe a month before the pandemic actually hit us. And I would say they came in at the right time, because one of them was also around life insurance. Okay? And life insurance actually comes in to address most of the issues that have been mentioned by Julia, as well as Elias, and actually protecting myself as well as the family to ensure that actually we have a future that's sort of guaranteed. But in terms of the policy, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I say, are there any new ones that you've taken as a consequence of COVID? Are there some new policies after COVID came and you said, oops, maybe I need to take a job loss insurance. Maybe I need to insure my parents because they are maybe above the 70 bracket that is a bit more vulnerable. What's been your thinking around that?
So my thinking around that, generally, it's good to have that insurance as well. But during the COVID pandemic as well, in that case, I haven't had to take one immediately as we go along. So I took most of the insurance because I have health, I have car insurance, I have life insurance. So all those were taking care of my needs in terms of what I needed at this point in time. but I would like to see where I can see many other different products being in there, and maybe myself in terms of what Elias had said and the insurance companies bringing in the technology where I can just go into my mobile app. I see these are the insurance packages available for the pandemic. This one fits me. I just tap it and consume on the go.
Okay, so if we get a bit personal, Harrison, and thank you for that feedback. If we get a bit personal with you, so for example, you've got a life insurance policy. Does your spouse have a life insurance policy as well, or have you chosen to go for one only?
At the moment, one only.
One only. Is that a choice, or is that been brought about by COVID, or is you've not thought that far, or are you at a higher risk of disappearing?
At the moment, yes, I'm missing the hugs and kisses, but not, not disappearing. So the thing is, it's actually enough for me, as well as in terms of actually being able to manage it with the premiums. At least it's somewhere where I can still be able to manage.
Okay, and then when children go to school, there's typically the element of paying some insurance at the school. Presumably, cars are not moving as much as possible. So, have you thought of shifting that dynamic in terms of saying that maybe there's some policy you've had that maybe you need to reweight and that sort of a thing, or what? Or you've not necessarily gone that far in thinking about this?
I have not necessarily gone that far thinking about it, but generally, especially in terms of the car, it's been parked for quite a while, and I would say it being parked as well, it has reduced the risk as well, because there's no much driving, so the risks of accidents are much lower, I would say. But maybe when it comes to renewal in the next year, if we are still in this pandemic period where things are not clear yet, then I might have to reconsider in terms of the insurance, and as well go for the bargain that Julia mentioned.
Okay, and then one last one before we go to the business side of it. What about in your community with whether it's relatives or friends? To what extent have you had incidences of people having to, for example, raise funds because they did not have a medical policy, whether it's that somebody's ill because of COVID or ill because of something else, or to what extent are you having to raise money for funerals because somebody didn't have a burial policy? What just from observatory point of view, what have you observed going on around yourself?
I would say quite a number are coming in terms of requests to actually raise funds either for illness or as well as bereavement for funerals. So it's quite a lot, and I would say if most of us were covered, generally we wouldn't have had this heavy weight to actually lift because of this. Yeah, so it's you can see maybe twice or thrice in a month you have been invited into such WhatsApp groups to actually contribute. Yes, and that's
okay. Thanks. You can go on to the business side of it. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So on the business side of things, majorly what we have seen, and especially the risks here, were generally around either the loss of productivity, because now either our employees would either get infected in that case, so they won't be able to actually meet their daily obligations, as well as disruptions in how the team actually maintains the collaboration now with the social distancing and working from home. When you're meeting physically, you're actually very vibrant in terms of what you want to do, and actually moving forward with the objectives usually becomes quite easy. So with this, generally, we were looking at how then are we able to keep the morale as well as the physical health of the team members who are working from home, and at the same time maintaining a security culture where with the workers working from home, malware and other these different attacks which are COVID related, they actually don't target these users who are there, and generally also compromise most of the institutions as we actually saw. So these are some of the risks, and some also involve things like the supply chain itself, us considering ourselves that we have customers within the East Africa region who depend on our products. So the supply chain was sort of affected, and affecting also our sales revenues, where things used to take a maximum of maybe 3 weeks to be delivered, now goods taking 6 to 8 weeks, because maybe some factories closed where we could obtain our raw materials. So those kind of risks. And for those workers who would maybe face maybe mental health issues, how can we be able as well to deal with those where the health insurance packages that are provided, how are they covering? If they're not covering it, how can they also be covered whenever such issues do arise? So in all this confusion, generally it's asking ourselves, where do I start? Because we will still want tomorrow to be a brighter day, and we don't just want to live for today. And also, we really want to have like some sort of hope when it comes to tomorrow. And here, generally, the basic things like masking up and washing hands and social distancing, those are the first things that I did well personally, but as well as a company in terms of the insurance packages which are offered by HR teams to be able to protect the employees in there as well. Work safety trainings also being conducted quite a lot, and we are doing them on a quarterly basis, so it's mandatory for all employees in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as part of the corporate responsibility, ourselves as Fortinet is actually offering some free cybersecurity awareness as well as trainings, which are extended now to build the team skills, either for ourselves internally, as well as to our customers, to be able to deal with cyber attacks, considering that we have a distributed workforce. So helping them manage the risk that comes with working from home in terms of the technology. So back to you, Mutsi, unless you have additional questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Harrison, for that very good view. So Julia, what's your reaction to Harrison's view? Harrison is your customer. Just based on what he said, what do you have to add to that conversation?
I think his views are on point, and I know he has an education policy, he's got a medical policy, he has a motor cover. I mean, he's got all these covers, and I know he hasn't introduced any so far. But should he feel there is a need to come and review everything downwards, we are ready, we can help him. So far, I think what he has is adequate. And obviously, as we go to 2021 January, we are going to review what he already has and see if there's anything we can do that will be a little different to make his situation a little better as he goes into 2021, because we've seen a lot of strains around in financials for people. So we just want to see how we can make his life a little more bearable come 2021.
Okay, fantastic. And George, sorry, not George, I keep saying George, Elias. Sorry, Elias, from your perspective, what is Harrison as our customer missing out? What perspective is he totally spot on? And what are some of the considerations that you think he needs to have a look, just based on his conversation? For you as an expert, as an actuary, what would you comment about the interview?
Right. I really liked one issue that Harrison mentioned, and this is ideally getting to read your policy document. This is something that most of the time you'll get that most of customers do not really go through their policy documents to understand what their coverage is, what their benefits are, and what are the what points do they really need to claim. So it's very, very important, as Harrison has mentioned, you really need to be conversant with what your document contains. And in case you don't understand everything that has been stipulated in your policy document, you can always reach out to the regulator in case you cannot reach your insurance agents or your insurance company. So it's very important to know and understand what your coverage is. The second point that our customers need to know is that risks tend to evolve, and you'll be able to see that at one point in time, maybe Harrison did not require an education policy for the children because the children were not there. But as the lifestyle evolves, you really need to prepare your family and also to protect yourself with these particular risks that are arising. And one of the things that we do mention as insurance professionals, ideally as actuaries, each and every risk has to be determined appropriately, underwriting has to be done, and ensure that you get the premium that is commensurate to the risk that is being undertaken. So most of the time, ensure that you look at a wide range of products. You need to look at, and ideally these particular products have different features. Look at the features that are appropriate to your need. ensure that you pay the premium that really is commensurate with the benefit that you require. Also, above time, these particular policies will be able to provide with a number of benefits along the way. So, for instance, if you've taken a product that will be giving you some bonuses after every period of time, ensure that you connect with the agent to enable you understand when are these particular bonuses going to come, when are these patch of maturities going to come, because you can be able to also plan in terms of, do I really need to convert to a new type of policy, or do I get this particular benefit, then enjoy and get some holiday somewhere in Mombasa or outside Kenya, in Zanzibar. So it's quite important. It's not only about protection, but also these policies do provide some investment benefit over and above the protection that we are looking at. So it's very important also to understand the risk, ensure that the risk that the product that you are purchasing is providing you with the right benefit that you need, and also in terms of the premium that you are paying, you should be able to be within the limit of the benefit that you want to get.
Okay, thank you very much, Harrison. Elias, keep mixing up names. My apologies. Thank you very much, Elias, for that feedback. So now we're opening up the question lines for all our audience. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. But for me, just having listened to Harrison, you look like you're a very good customer of Julia. You've got medical, you've got auto, you've got life, you've got educational. I'm a customer and I'm thinking, this is COVID times. Who has money to spend on that? How much do you spend on insurance in a year, Mr. Harrison? Yeah, you feel free to share that figure.
I can't really mention about figure immediately. I have to go back and do some calculations. But generally, it's about planning yourself whenever you want to generally go and pick any package, either in terms of is it education, is it life insurance, is it car insurance. Go talk to your insurance agent or to your bank assurance. Get familiar with the packages that are being offered in there. Discuss in detail generally what fits you, what fits your current as well as future concerns that you generally have. Get the draft policy, envisage it in how it will look for you in the long term, let's say in at least 3, 5, or 10 years. If comfortable, take the final offer and sign against it, and generally make a commitment now in terms of how you're going to meet the premiums. Because this was also quite important for me, where in terms of the premiums, I don't have to wait till when they are due, but actually start small, every month contribute something towards the premiums. By the time they are due, at least I can be able to pay them and I don't get to lose on the policy. So that's generally what I would advise.
That's a good answer.
Just to mention something, Mutsi, you're mentioning, okay, how much? I know that's a very quite important question. How much is someone willing to spend? One of the things that we did also advise the insurance companies to do, in case the clients were facing some difficulties, you would basically go back to an insurance company or insurance agent and talk about how do I adjust my policy in a way that the amount of money that I have, I should be able to gain a benefit out of it. So we advised companies and insurance agents and the clients that were facing challenges during this particular period to basically to talk to the insurance companies, because these particular policies you can readjust and pay an amount that you're comfortable paying. So it's quite important also to understand that there is a particular element of flexibility when it comes to some of the policies that are currently being offered in the market.
Thank you, Elias. In fact, you've actually positioned the question very well for Julia, which is, given that not all our customers have the cash flow of Mr. Harrison, Absa Bank Insurance Agency, what deals do you have? You guys are part of a major bank. There are some premium financing options. Kuna malipo ya pole pole. Is it buy one, get two free? What do you guys have before we think begin to draw to a close? Julia, you're on mute. You're on mute, Julia. Not yet. We can't hear you, Julia. Sorry. Oh. Okay, Marianne, could you help us out? Julia's got challenges with her volume. Very important question on financing. Okay, so we've got a challenge on volume there. I'm assuming there's a voice in the background though, of a, I don't know if it's a panelist who's talking in the background. Okay, I think we've got challenges. Immaculate, are you online? Are you able to help with that question?
I'm just drawing from what Harrison and last have talked about.
Okay, Julia, I think you're back now. You can go ahead.
I'm not.
Okay, Julia, can you hear us? Yes, that's better.
You cannot hear me at all?
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
I'm not on mute.
We can hear you.
Unless my neck is sore.
Okay, so that's not working very well.
I can't hear you.
Julia?
Let me turn on my phone.
Okay, I think we'll
Can you hear me?
that, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
can you
we
hear me
can.
now?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
It is me actually. I'm trying to talk. Am I audible now?
You're doing good. Yeah.
Am I audible now? You can hear me now? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so,
okay. So I was saying, drawing from what Elias and Harrison have just, you can hear me. I was, thank you. Can I proceed?
You may proceed.
Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me. Okay, fine. So I was saying, drawing from Elias and sentence on how then do I go on, how much do I pay? There's no small or big amount. It's what can you afford today, and what is your risk exposure? Can we work on it? How can we work around what your affordability? Just as we put it, you could be paying policies that you paid for some period, and now you're paying and feel maybe you need to check to vary. So then we could actually have a plan where we can vary your payment system downwards or upwards based on what you are going through at the moment. Are you able to hear me?
Please proceed, Julia.
I have spoken for more than 2 minutes, so maybe we can move on.
Thank you, Julia. It's unfortunate that the connection was not very good, so I think we'll leave it there. But for the benefit of those we have, I request Julia and Immaculate to leave their contacts on the chat box so that in case you do need to get in touch with Absa Bank Insurance Agency, you can do that. So Julia and Immaculate, please leave your contacts on the chat box so that our customers can get in touch with you. Up to now, I don't see any questions And the time now is 4:50, 10 minutes to go. So I think I will call it a day over there. What we are now going to do is we'll just do a very quick summary. And what we've had our panelists basically telling us is that
am I audible? I spoke for 2 minutes. I hope you heard what I said.
Okay, could I request the other panelists to please mute their microphones? Thank you very much. Julia, could you please mute your microphone? Thank you. So I was saying that the summary we basically had from our panelists today is number one, yes, insurance during this period is critically important because the number of risks that we normally have are actually beginning to actualize, especially in the areas of health. But the upside also is that not all risks have increased. Some risks have gone down. For example, the risks of traveling on road has gone down. If you've got an institution and you've got workers in a factory or children in a school, that risk has gone down. So I think there's an element to which things are being balanced out. So it's not all bad news. And then, of course, the regulator has told us that they actually have given special emphasis over this period to make sure that consumers are protected. So if you do buy an insurance policy, you are protected. The regulator is looking out for you. It's not just an open market where the premium giver will do what he wants. You're totally covered. Then we've had the voice of the consumer from Harrison, who apparently is a very avid consumer of insurance. And he's just given us a view of what he's prioritized during this period. So I think we've got a generally very good balanced view, which will then bring us to the end of the question. I would like to just thank our audience for being with us today. Thank you very much for your participation. I assume that the fact that there were no questions means that the panelists were very, very clear and very direct. So that's why there are no questions. And so we're now going to invite Marianne to run the last poll for us, which will really be about the review of the session. Marianne, are you on board? Are you with us, Marianne? Are you able to put on the last poll question? Thank you very much. So the last question that we have, and Marianne, I hope will remember to put in the NPS question at the end. But right now, the question I'd like you to answer for us is, what are your insurance priorities over this COVID period? And again, you may select all that apply. So which ones are your priorities? Number one, motor, health, education, life, or any other one? What are your insurance priorities during the COVID period? Personally, if I was to look at this, I would say I'd probably prioritize health and life, but I don't have the power to vote on this. But again, it's not really prioritizing, it's simply saying which are the ones that you consider most important. So please vote in right now. I'm going to give us about a minute to vote, and then we'll see the results. What are your priorities over this COVID period? Perhaps you want to pick the ones that are most important to you. So let's have that coming in there. 1 minute to get those votes, and then we'll pick it up from there. Meanwhile, Marianne will be preparing the NPS poll for the end. Thank you very much. Let's vote right now. You can vote by clicking on the screen, on the blank box, put a tick on the ones that are important to you. You could select one, you could select all five, you could select two, or you could select three, or you could select four. So please go for it, and then Marianne will give us the results just now. Thank you. Excellent. Health is the overwhelming winner. No surprise to that. 73% are saying life, and then the rest are significantly less important. School is out. Only 39% are considering education. Motor, 25%, very interesting. One would have thought that that would be a bit higher because everybody has a car, but presumably because people are not driving. And then you've got the other little policies going in for 9%. So thank you very much for your responses to that. And we will now ask Marianne to give us the NPS poll for us to just give our feedback. And then I'll invite Julia Shisia to close the session for us as the representative and boss of Africa Bank Insurance Agency. So Marianne, if we're able to put in the NPS poll, that would be great. If we do have it. If we don't, just let us know. But if we do have it, it will be useful to have that on the screen. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your responses to the poll. So I think we'll be getting
at the end of the webinar, so you can close Mutsi.
Okay, so Julia, over to you, and then we'll close it down. Thank you. Julia, assuming you can speak, you had challenges talking. If you've got challenges talking, I think I'll close it for us. Actually, on that note, I think I will close the session, just so we don't take Julia through the agony of trying to speak. So thank you very much all for being part of this session. Thank you for participating. Absa Bank Insurance Agency would like to engage with you a lot more on your insurance needs, on insurance planning. So please do keep your eyes open for the next session on insurance. Also, as Absa Bank, we've got a whole line of events designed for you to make sure that you're asking us questions and we're making sure our products are suited for your needs. But more importantly than that, also just helping us to think through these unprecedented times. Maximum thanks to Elias Omondi and Harrison, who've been our panelists. Thank you for taking the time to really speak to customers during this period, to speak to us. It's been very enlightening, and we thank you very much for putting in. And most of all, thank you for our panelists, for our participants who have taken the time. We hope it's been useful. Please do continue to give feedback. Like we said, we will upload the event on our website, and we shall send you the link so you'll be able to follow up in case you want to get some clarity on various aspects. Thank you very much, and have a lovely evening. Have a good evening. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.